As a small business person myself, I wanted to have a chat with Mahesh. Today, we're going to be talking about marketing fundamentals.
All right. Now, this is a very age-old definition of marketing from Henry Ford. Poor man, he's often maligned. The quote of his saying, "You can have any car as long as it is black."
Yeah, that's
I
right.
think it's often misquoted. And his quote, I think, even though we today we live in an autonomous car age, I think it's still a very valid point. If you're not customer driven, your cars will not be. And
Yeah.
every business says this, and but they become empty words. But you got to sort of start living your customer's journey for you to be a really customer driven. So I think that's probably the overarching fundamental point I would like to make for any business, irrespective of what sector they are in. You've got to be customer driven. There are some areas where you probably won't be customer driven, like new product development. Customers may not know, what product they would want in the future. But most of the time, I think it's a very, very, very fundamental axiom. The fundamental premise in marketing is value exchange. To put it very, very simply, the value delivered by a business to a buyer must equal or exceed the value the buyer attaches to the money they're willing to part with. Now, unfortunately, I think we are losing sight of this value exchange principle. When I look around and look at all the sales signs everywhere, everybody wants to have a sale, and it's 60% off, 40% off, 50% off, and to attract customers. And I'm not saying that that's universally a bad idea, but oftentimes it tends to reduce the value perception of what we're trying to sell, whether it's a product or a service. I always think the best example of marketing ever is barter. I don't know if you would recall how people used to trade before
Yeah, before
coins came
cash. Yeah,
into
yeah.
take my wheat and give me your goats, and both are happy.
There's actually a bit of a movement to restart that in modern
Yeah, I
society.
think so. I think so. Yeah. The beauty of that value exchange is that the seller knows the value of what they are parting with and what they're getting in return. The buyer also knows the value of what they are giving away and what they are getting in return. Now, today, I think the equation has changed because everyone is so driven by the marginal cost. If we can cover our marginal cost, we should be happy. And then we forget what's the sunken cost, what's the fixed cost in the business.
Yeah.
And as a result, we don't make enough money because we are continually undervaluing our products and services and selling it at a lower price. So I think small business must sort of go back to the fundamentals of what is the value exchange we're trying to sort of get here. How much are buyers paying for this service, and how much money are we making out of this? I call price is precious, don't give it away. If you look at it from a different angle, the only P out of product, price, place, and promotion among the 4 Ps of marketing, the only P that makes money for a business is price.
Yeah.
Because product, you got to invest to sort of create the product. You got to have a distribution, you got to again sort of invest some dollars to get your distribution chain going. Promotion, again, it's not, you got to obviously pay money to promote your product. Price is the only P. That's the only lever you have to pull to make a profit. If we look at price that way, we will probably be more reluctant to give it away,
Yeah.
So I think it's important too. The other thing is there's this concept of how do we determine price? It should cover the cost of whatever you're trying to offer, including fixed costs and making a product, the variable costs, the long-term cost, the sunken cost. But it should also be based somewhat on what is the value that a competitor is giving, and how much are they charging for that? If you
Yeah.
are giving more value than a competitor, then you have the freedom to charge a higher price. If you're giving less value, then obviously your price should be, because the customer compares you with the competition in terms of what value they're getting from each of you.
Yes.
The important thing is to take all these three aspects, your cost, your competitive parity, and the customer's perception of value delivered by you when determining price. Oftentimes we don't. We just look at the cost and determine the price and say, oh, my costs have gone up and therefore I'll increase the price. But what's the value the customer is perceiving of your product or service? And the last point is, if you don't believe in the value that your product or service delivers, don't expect your customers will. And I got this story from a long time ago. I may have shared this before, about this barber, and he had quite a thriving business of haircutting, and he was charging, I think, $20 pop for a haircut and doing very well. One fine morning, there's a competitor who opens up a shop across the road, and he puts up a big sign saying $6.50 a pop for a haircut. And this barber is thinking really hard overnight, thinking, what do I do? I mean, should I drop my price? Most people would drop the price because they don't want to lose their customers.
Yeah.
And next morning, he decides to put up a big sign, as big as the $6.50 sign, in front of his shop, which says, "We fix $6.50 haircuts." So now I know it seems so, it's funny, but if you look deeper, I think this barber has confidence in the value he's delivering to his customers. Now, it's a good illustration, say, if you don't believe in the value that your product or service is delivering, then how can you expect your customers will?
Yeah.
So you got to start believing in the value of what you sell. You shouldn't be overconfident, but at the same time, you should probably be realistic about what's the value that we are delivering. And are we charging a price that is commensurate with the value that we are delivering? So I think this is an area where small businesses need to invest a lot more time in trying to understand pricing and value. Okay, here are a couple of quick examples. Let's assume you got a product that is selling at $100 and it costs a business to $70 to make it or to create the service.
Yeah.
So basically, they're making a profit of $30. Now, if the business decides to reduce the price by $10, so now the price becomes $90, they're actually making a profit of $20 because the cost is still $70. So what's happened is the price has gone down by 10%. The profit has gone down by 1/3. Quantity sold has gone up. And so you're very happy. You're patting yourself on the back saying that, okay, I dropped the price by 10% and I got 15% more quantity. And therefore, my total revenue has gone up by whatever, 3.5%. But your profit, total profit, has gone down from $3,000 before to $2,300, which is more than 20%. So at the end of the day, and this is probably clearer in the next slide, what you can bank is not your revenue, because you got to take away all your costs. What you're left with is your profit. You can only bank your profits. So it doesn't matter how much more revenue you can make. In this example, I've said, okay, because I've reduced the price, I'm actually selling more quantity. Maybe my cost per unit has also gone down marginally. So that's gone down from $70 to $67. As a result, your profit is now $23 as opposed to $20. It's still, the profit per unit has gone down by over 23%. And the quantity sold has gone up even further to 20%. Total revenue has gone up by 8% in this example. But total profit, interestingly, has gone down by an equivalent 8%. So
yeah, that's really interesting. I think a lot of small and medium businesses tend to, as you say, focus more on the money coming in rather than the actual profitability. So that's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know we're all caught up in business and there's so many pressures, the day-to-day pressures, but I think it's important to pause and just take stock of, okay, how much money are we bringing in? It's good, our revenue has grown, but how is it impacting on our profit? And if businesses started doing this, I think we go back to that earlier slide where we say, if you're pursuing profits ahead of growth, then you are likely to achieve high growth and high profitability. Whereas if you're prioritizing growth ahead of profits, you're likely to achieve only lower profits and lower growth in the longer term. So I think it's a very pertinent point for a lot of businesses. This is actually something I picked up from, I think, one of the Harvard lecturers, Cynthia Montgomery, I think. And she actually did this exercise. She brings to her class skulls, very attractive skulls, human skulls, which are sort of decked with, I think, porcelain, colorful porcelain. So they all look very attractive. She puts it on the table and then tells all these chief executives, imagine now that your company is dead and gone, is no more. So what it's quite a daunting, daunting thought, I suppose. So what will your customers do? I think it's important for small business to also think, if I'm not there tomorrow, will my customers run to the next competitor, or would they actually sort of bemoan my loss and saying that, look, I missed that company. I'm so happy the kind of service I was getting, the quality was good, the pricing was fair, or whatever the reasons. I think what will your customers do if you were not there is a very, very soul-searching question, which I think businesses will benefit from asking once in a way, at least. Okay.
And also, it might also give insights into like who your competitors are, and as you say, sort of where you are in the market if you ask it from that point of view. So that's really helpful.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about segmentation, because these days we talk about extreme personalization, everything, and you can't do that online. I suppose each customer is a segment of one. If you look at a coffee shop, for instance, small coffee shop, where you get a majority of your clientele is regulars, what they want. In fact, even before they order for the coffee, you know what they're asking for, and you make that. Or maybe you might just ask the question the same, or you will say, "Oh, you flat white with one sugar," or whatever.
Yeah,
you can do that. So personalization is possible without too much of investment. But in a lot of other companies which are probably selling online, I think you still need segmentation, because it's not economical to have a segment of one and survive in business while containing your costs. You've got to be able to sort of do some degree of segmentation, saying this type of customers want these kind of benefits, or they respond to these kind of stimuli, whatever. Segmentation has sort of become a little bit passé and old-fashioned, I think, in marketing. And I believe it's important for any business, whether big or small, to have an understanding of what the market is composed of, and segmentation based on behavior more than anything else. Yes, demographic segmentation is important. Yes, psychographic segmentation is important. Actual product purchase behavior and why people buy things, and segmentation based on that, is very, very critical. More so for a small business, because you probably want to contain your costs of marketing. And I think segmentation helps you to target more precisely. So how do you find your ideal segment? I think this is a question you asked of me a while ago. I think it's marketers also tend to spend a lot of time, lot of effort, lot of dollars on understanding buyer behavior. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, it's become much easier for us to compile data about customers. Okay, we know every little detail of that. I think it's probably more important to take a step back and understand a buyer, not just as a buyer of a product or service, but as a person. What is this person? What role does this product or service perform in their lives? How does it make their lives better or simpler, or more convenient, or less expensive to do something? If we understand that, then I think we are better able to zero in on your ideal target. The person, understand the person, what role does your product or service play in that person's life, and how does it make their life better? Then you can think in terms of, once you identify the person, okay, are there enough number of people who fit that profile?
Yes.
Then they are your prime segment. and do they have the capacity to pay? If they don't have the capacity to pay, obviously you don't want them to be your buyer segment.
No.
So this shift from understanding buyer behavior to understanding people's behavior and how products or services fit in their lives, I think can give you better, insightful information about your segment than any market research can.
Would it also help you to understand where you might find them, like in the sense of where they gather?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And talk to people. You can
Yeah.
talk to people. You will not be able to talk to buyers, but you can talk to people. And when you
Yeah.
talk to people, you get an idea of, okay, what drives them? What are their frustrations? And oftentimes, and this is particularly true of startups, I find that people have this idea about a product and they want to sort of take that to the market without understanding what's the problem that people are facing
Yeah.
and how well does your product or service solve the problem.
Yes.
And then you look at other people who experience a similar problem, and do they have the capacity to pay? Without doing this, we sort of go into the startup mode and we sort of invest a lot of time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears trying to launch the product. And it's never easy, but it's because you haven't spent enough time trying to understand potential buyers as people, as individuals, rather than just buyers. Once you know the segment, and this is a technique which I have found very useful. I've done it, in consulting, just using coasters actually on a table, because you're sitting at a coffee house and you say, okay, this is how it is.
Yeah.
Once you identify your segment, your prime segment, also identify who is your prime competitor, because there will be many competitors, but who is the key competitor that you want to sort of take away share from? If you did this analysis religiously in a very disciplined way, I think you can get a lot of pointers as to how you can grow that segment. So if you take the top circle as a customer, the entire circle is representing the customer. Now the customer has got some needs which you as a company are meeting, which is this your value add segment. The competitor is also meeting some of the customer's needs, which is their value add, and therefore their points of difference. Both you and your competitor are actually offering something to the customer that the customer doesn't really want, which is parity, but is irrelevant to the customer.
Yeah.
And both of you are actually missing out something that the customer really wants, which is the top portion, customer's unmet needs and its potential value. We can only know this when we talk to customers in depth. Once we have somebody as a customer, we probably don't invest as much time talking to them.
Yeah.
They are already there, so we want to sort of look for new customers.
Move on.
And we sort of neglect, but there may be unmet needs that the customer has, which you could sort of satisfy and thereby increase the share of wallet of the customer. So this is a very simple technique, which is attributed to Joe Albany and James Davis. It's simple, it's practical, it's effective. And I've actually used this with clients sometimes just to understand more in depth what customer wants and how and maybe sometimes this is in some way, I don't know if you see the similarity, similar to Blue Ocean strategy, where you're actually cutting back on things that are not really valuable, and you are enhancing the value or lifting the value of things that really mean something. So it's in some way similar to that, but it is, you do it for one segment and for one competitor. Then it becomes, otherwise it can become very, very sort of muddy. So a simple concept which a lot of small businesses can benefit from. I feel the 4-piece concept has been dinned into people so much that sometimes we forget to realize that the 4-piece are all from the marketer or the manufacturer or the service provider's perspective. Product is what the manufacturer makes, or service is what the service provider creates. Price is what the marketer sets, promotion is what you do as a communication, and place is your decisions relating to distribution. So they're not all coming from, for a discipline such as marketing, which is meant to be customer oriented. All these 4 Ps. So as a marketer, I sometimes feel a little disappointed saying that why is it that this concept has become so popular. Yes, it's very simple for people to grasp, but it also looks at everything from the seller's perspective and not the buyer's perspective. So I think there have been some work done in the past called the 4 Cs, which I think better represents a customer orientation towards marketing, which is the first C is the core need. What's the core need that you're trying to sort of the second C is what are the costs, the total cost to the customer. It's not just the buying cost, it's the cost of using a product, disposing it off. And nowadays, I think that's also a very important part, given the importance to sustainability. And it's also a two-way communication. It's not one-way communication, but it's more a sort of conversation rather than communication. Similar distribution is more about convenience and not about a channel. It's what is more convenient for the customer. So if you look at customer need, if you look at total cost of acquisition, disposal, usage, and if you look at convenience and not distribution, and if you look at conversation rather than communication, as so conversation is a two-way street, then I think we can tweak those 4 Ps a lot better, keeping the customer in focus all the time. So
I really like that about the 4 Cs. I hadn't heard of them before, but as you say, they're much more customer centric rather than organization centric.
Yeah, and I know for a small business, as in the pressures are so many for them to sort of pause and think about. But whenever they're doing their maybe strategy planning session or whatever once a year, it's time to probably do this. It can be very helpful, actually. Perhaps it's a good idea to recall this concept, which I find I mentioned earlier, where you said you're a low cost product, but your advertising doesn't reflect that. I think this is probably a takeoff from there, where your product, your price, your place, and promotion, if you stick to the 4 Ps, must be reflected in your positioning. If any of them is at variance, then I think it all falls flat. I think you can have a high quality item priced at a premium, sold through very exclusive channels and promoted by a celebrity, and that's fine. But you cannot sell an expensive watch, say, in Kmart. You may be able to sell some watches which have got fewer features or benefits, may not have lifelong service, for instance, lifelong battery replacement, things like that. But if you're going to offer all those benefits, the channel where it is sold must be in alignment with the pricing and the premiumness of the product and the premiumness of the advertising or promotion or social media presence, whatever it is. On the other hand, you can have a moderately priced value product sold at discount stores using mass media. But if the positioning does not align with all the elements, then I think you have a problem. And oftentimes, a lot of businesses fall into this trap. They don't have those 4 aspects in alignment with the positioning. As a result, the positioning is weak because the customers really don't know what you're standing for.
And that's really interesting, because I think one of the challenges for a lot of small and medium businesses is they're often trying to provide value, but not a low cost kind of price. So there's quite a range there between like bottom of the market and top of the market. And it's kind of hard sometimes to find the right position within that.
Correct. Yeah. Where do you want to pitch it? It's important, I think.
Really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us.
Thank you, Dom. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to you.